Hi everyone, my name's Zeke Sanchez. My current interest is becoming an electrician, and my favorite food is chicken parm. And today I was going to be going over the essay Bordered by Valeria, and then the report No Childhood Here, Why Central American Children Are Fleeing Their Homes by Elizabeth Kennedy. And I was going to be going over my analysis as well as different facts that I felt like stood out a lot to me, and different passages that I felt like, changed the way I felt or maybe offered a new perspective and things as well. And then the passage that stood out to me the most from No Childhood Here by Elizabeth Kennedy was the one where she talks about how children and a lot of their families can't trust the Salvadoran government, which means they can't trust the police or even just government officials to be able to pass laws and create progression, to create safer environments for them. And then within this section, Kennedy talks about different examples of how the children are directly affected by the police officers and how they really cannot just trust the government they live in. One example she brings up is how they had 16 different children bring up that they felt insecurities within the government, and how 8 of them who reported it to a government official were directly told no, and that no report was ever made. And then she also gave another example out of the 2 out of the 16 children that had tried to make a report. That report was made, but then they had an increase in threats, which shows that there was some sort of compliance with the gangs inside of that police department that they were at. And then just another quick text from No Childhood Here that I felt like stood out to me a lot, and I was able to make a connection to, not directly, but through my mom, was the one later on, and where Kennedy talks about how there was 2 men in about their early 20s traveling with their teenage sisters. And then once they had made it to America, they had asked for asylum, but because they weren't black or Muslims, they were denied, and they were forced to go back without ever being able to talk to a lawyer. And then once they were forcibly returned back to El Salvador, Kennedy talks about how the 2 men reported that their sisters were immediately attempted to become girlfriends, which really just means workers for the drug cartels, and they were going to try to even attempt to kidnap them. And I was able to make this connection because my mom had told me a story of when she had went to visit Guatemala because our grandma had migrated, and she told me that her first time down, within the first day, that she almost gotten kidnapped by a drug gang in the neighborhood that had taken over Guatemala City in that section she was in. And then she was so traumatized that she has never gone back, and that is a big reason why, despite me and my siblings always wanted to visit Guatemala, she has never taken us, as she feels the government itself is still not safe for us, especially since we're going to be outsiders. And then next, going over Bordered by Valeria, to me the passage that stood out to me the most was the one where it was they brought up the different protests that they see at the detention centers. And then the specific one I was talking about is when Valeria talks about the different protests that they had seen on the web and different photos that were shown at the Wolverine Center in Michigan. To me, this one stood out to me the most because she begins to ask a lot of questions, and then she brings up how the setups and the different things that they bring. And to quickly go over, she talks about how they bring even guns, they bring posters protesting, saying that illegal is not right and that they need to go back to where they came from. She talks about how a lot of these families and people that come to protest are simply just in beach chairs and sunglasses. And to me, I think the passage, the reason why this one stood out to me the most was because I feel like she really begins to question our morals and human rights. Simply, she begins she goes over and asks what passes through their mind when they prepare the signs and stuff. And she also asks, is it on their calendars? What do they do when they're packing their car with the chairs, making sure they have water and snacks? And to me, I felt like that was just so important because it really is as they're packing all of this, which seemed like they're going to go either watch a baseball game or something, then they bring their guns and stuff, and it's wow, these are just children who are looking to better their lives. And it was just because right before this passage as well, she talks about how a lot of the children aren't actually, coming to the U.S. for the American dream. Rather, they're trying to leave the nightmare is the term she uses, that they live in their own home countries.